Welcome to Hail to the Podcast, brought to you by Maize and Blue Review. We obviously cover Michigan sports for the Rivals Network over at michigan.rivals.com. Today, we're going to be talking about the still 15-0 national champion Michigan football team. Obviously, with their season ending literally at the end of the season, we've had kind of a rapid week this week with NFL decisions, some transfer portal decisions as well. The dust is kind of settled. Team 145 is starting to come into shape. So we are going to go through each position group, kind of talk about where things are looking right now heading into the spring, obviously who left, what into their decisions, who's still here, and just who we think might break out from the group, go through our potential depth chart, and then whether or not Michigan may need to look into the portal to address some needs that they may not have predicted. And of course, we will be talking about Jim Harbaugh and what's going on with him and his potential stay or go decision. Obviously, an interview with the Chargers this week. We'll get into where all the things stand with that, which if you have been at michigan.rivals.com, you've been getting updates already from our Intel insider and publisher, Mr. Josh Henschke. How you doing, buddy?
Doing good. How about you?
I'm tired.
Yeah.
We were talking about, I don't know what my deal is. I don't know if it's the winter weather finally arriving or what, but just been tired lately. But hey, I'm also in Groundhog's Day with this Harbaugh stuff, right?
Yeah.
But we're going to talk about it. This feels a little different this year. It's kind of a weird in-between of the previous years. It's similar but different. But anyway, Brock not traveling, not going to a football game for the first time in a long time. So how are you doing, Mr. Brock Heilig?
I'm doing good. It's interesting though. I think there's this false perception that after football season is over, things die down and it gets boring. But this week has been just as busy, if not even busier than a normal football week with all the, draft decisions, portal entries, things like that. It's been a lot to keep up with, along with basketball too. So there's definitely been a lot to keep up with.
Wait, there's basketball?
Basketball got a win against Ohio State. If we have time at the end of the show, we will bring up that game and what I feel was a stunt, frankly, by Jawan and the Fab Five. If we have time,
Hopefully, someone just filibusters this show. That'd be great.
But no, Brock, you're right. Football is a year-round sport now, man. Between the signing day and transfer portal windows, and then obviously, spring camp's not that far away. We obviously have the NFL draft, and Michigan has, depending on how you count it, 20 or 21 eligible players in this NFL draft. So Harbaugh at the start of the year said, hey, I've got a team to win the national championship, and I think I got 18 dudes going to the NFL. Yeah, right? You might be right. We'll have to see how many actually get drafted as we're going through the scholarship chart. And then, like I said, some of those in and out decisions, we can maybe talk about that as well in terms of NFL shakeout. But of course, we got to lead with the big story, which is always Jim Harbaugh and NFL rumors. So, Josh, I know there's a specific topic you want to talk about as far as rumors and things going around. We've reached the tension and leverage stage, right? The season is over. Jim Harbaugh can no longer talk about his one-track mind on, Michigan football. Obviously, he is now able to and is speaking to NFL teams. So things are being said in the media. And like I said, it's tension and leverage at this point. So, right, I kind of handicap this or fill in people with what we know, and maybe what we know is BS and all of this. But Jim Harbaugh, Michigan, working on a contract per word manual at the Michigan celebration. Jim Harbaugh has interviewed, right? This wasn't just a conversation that the Chargers released it, which is not an abnormal thing, by the way. I don't know if people don't realize that, but the NFL has gotten really formal with that in the last couple of years. They always tweet out who they've interviewed with, but they have interviewed Jim Harbaugh. He was in California for something else, etc. But anyway, as we sit here on Tuesday, where are things? And like I said, what do you think are facts in this scenario? And maybe what's some BS that's out there right now?
There's a lot of BS out there. I don't even know where to start with the BS, honestly.
There's one thing of BS I think you could talk about. If you want to drop in the others, go ahead. But I know there's one thing you're passionate about.
Well, yeah, but I don't really care enough to even talk about it because we know, I'll just talk about it.
Do what you want to do, brother.
The fact that everyone talks about how the regents are involved and the regents are, have a say about the contract process. That's crap. It's not true. They can't do that. They have no say in the contract process. They don't ratify a contract through, meetings and stuff like that. They don't do that. So anyone that tries to tell you that there's a region involved that's trying to, trying to get involved or trying to say that they wouldn't approve of the contract, you just wave them off, because this is a Michigan Athletic Department thing and this is a Jim Harbaugh thing. So anyone else, and I guess Santa Ono too, I suppose, to a certain degree, because obviously he has to ultimately, sign off on everyone else's paycheck. So, but I think that was the main point of BS that I heard coming out of the weekend, that, so-and-so region doesn't like the language or whatever that Harbaugh's asking for. Too bad if he or she doesn't like it. Too bad. It's nothing. You can't do anything about it, Regent. And I think the big thing for me is that, only at Michigan do we know all these regents' names. Like, it's like if you're a long snapper, if you do your job, no one should know your name. If you're if you're in a position where someone knows your name, either that you're popular or that you've made some mistakes, that people know your name. And the regents, yeah, they're elected officials. You have to know their names somewhat, but we shouldn't have to know these regents. They shouldn't have to be involved. They shouldn't have to get their names muddied up in all of this stuff. Just let the athletic department do what they do and let them talk to Jim Harbaugh and go from there. There should be no interlap. I mean, yeah, the regents can voice their opinions and all that stuff and voice their support for Jim Harbaugh to make him feel the love, whatever. I don't care. They have nothing to do with this. So I just want to make that abundantly clear, that if you hear anyone that says, so-and-so regent wants to get involved and say they're shutting this down. No, that's not how any of this works. It's not how it works. It just makes everyone else's job harder, trying to sift through crap to get out to the other end of the sewage pipe. So
let's be careful with the poo visuals in this episode. I was haunted by your Taco Bell comments last week. So
explosives.
Yeah. So, but as far as that goes, though, the clause language and Michigan working on the contract, there's that, and then I think there's also Jim Harbaugh wants to hear what the NFL has to say.
Oh, there's no doubt about it.
And I know everybody wants to blame someone, but that's just true, right?
I think it's time. I think it's time we start looking at Jim Harbaugh and pointing fingers at him. We've heard for the last 2 years that a contract's being worked on. There's takes two to tango, and yeah, Ward Manuel isn't perfect. He's not this infallible being that that can do no wrong. Yes, he's imperfect. Yes, he's made mistakes. But when you're talking about Jim Harbaugh, he's coming off the first time with the Vikings and saying this is a one-time thing and it'll never happen again. Well, this is year 3 of this stuff, and the third year looks more real than the other two.
Yeah.
So at this point, if you're going to have the university by the balls, at least be honest and not have all this stuff come out that, you're negotiating. Yeah, you're negotiating, but at the same time, something, just funnily enough, something new pops up to derail or push back the negotiations. So yes, it takes two to tango in this situation. But if one side has a wandering eye and is doing everything it can to stall and push back, and I'm not saying this is Jim Harbaugh directly, because he's working with agents and lawyers and things like that, but it's a collective. And, if this thing keeps getting pushed back, something new pops up, something's, wrong with the minutia of the legalese in the contract. Just say you're waiting for an NFL offer. Just say it. You have the right to do it. And as much as you want to say, your preference is to be at Michigan, just say that you want to look in the NFL and you want to see what happens. Just be honest. I mean, yeah, he's being honest to the people that matter. But the fact that this negotiation has become public now just totally muddies up the waters and now allows Jim Harbaugh to kind of have people give the excuse, oh, well, this negotiation was a mess. So he said, you know what, screw it. I'm out of here. I'm going to go to the NFL. It gives everyone an out. He's not bulletproof. There is blame for him on this side. And there's blame for Ward Manuel for getting to this, for this, getting this far.
Yeah.
Again, it's a two-sided thing. It's not, this is one guy's fault. Ward Manuel has done everything he can to keep Jim Harbaugh. And there's just something new that pops up every time, whether it's the language in his contract about the NCAA and all that stuff, which isn't that much of an ask. It's not that too big of an ask. However, if you're Michigan, you're asserting some level of risk to this too, because you're the one that has to pay him $100 million.
Well, and there's an unknown, right? Michigan does not have an NOA
right
on the Burgergate part of the scandal. So to put out this blanket like, hey, yeah, no matter what comes from that,
yeah,
you won't be fired. Well, maybe there's something we don't know potentially, right? Like,
right. And I'm not saying that, the NCAA is going to find something, but again, you're asserting a level of risk,
right,
giving him this guaranteed deal and, saying, oh, hey, don't worry about it. No matter what happens, yeah, it allows you to have a little bit of trust in your guy. And, they've had his back throughout this whole process, but there is some level of risk to this. And, I think Michigan is going to be in the process where they're kind of, there's going to be some sort of middle ground. I don't think they're going to be, caving and say, oh, hey, whatever you want, you can have it. There's got to be some middle ground. And yeah, the legalese and the wording in the contract has to be specific, because if there's one little like loophole in it, and if you're in trouble, there's a way to punch through it, then who knows, you may be I'm sorry, I'm distracted by Jet in the background. He wants to dig a hole in the ground. That there's some level of risk. So yeah, I mean, yeah, this is kind of what you get when you're successful. They want to people go pro, as we're going to talk about today. Coaches get poached from you all the time. And in Jim Harbaugh's case, he's in demand. And, I just think it's funny that all of these coaches around the league can get a contract extension done within 48 hours. Well, this thing with Harbaugh's gone on for 2 years. So at what point do we say he just wants to see what the NFL offers and goes from there? But at some point, the NFL stuff has to end. It doesn't matter. That's my cat, by the way, that's opening up the closet doors, not some ghostly figure behind me that's opening these doors. It's a problem in this household that I have been trying to fix. But anyway, I don't have a ghost in my house. So at some point, you have to shit or get off the pot. And off the pot is be done with if you're here for Michigan, say it and stay. If you're not, be open and honest and say, hey, I'm waiting for a good offer. And that's exactly what he's doing now. I mean, he interviewed face-to-face with the Chargers over the weekend. Just say that, hey, if there's an offer, the perfect offer out there, and you'll take it, at least be honest and not let your negotiations be so public where, one side is getting heavily framed as Michigan being this inept, impossible piece to work with that's not allowing you to get what you want in terms of your phrasing and stuff. And I bet you any money, if Michigan gets through this hiring stuff unscathed, gets through the NFL hiring process, and Harbaugh doesn't leave, you will magically start to see progress on this contract extension. Magically, just by some unknown being, all of a sudden everything's going to get worked out. Well, gee, I wonder why, because you've gone through the NFL process and you're still here. And now, wow, look at that. You can't get hired now. So this whole thing is exhausting, to be honest with you. To be perfectly honest, I don't really have opinion either way of what he should do. I mean, at this point, if we're still here year 3, if there's something that's out there and you get offered, you may as well take it now, because you can't hold Michigan hostage every year. The football program, you can't hold them hostage every year. So It's exhausting. It's exhausting. I mean, yeah, Jim Harbaugh has a place at the big boy table. He doesn't. I mean, yeah, I understand the NFL itch, but he's got everything he wants and more in Ann Arbor. And at this point, if that's not good enough, then go and try and get that elusive Super Bowl ring. But it's just, yeah, it's just.
Well, we've talked about the fact that he has everything and more in Ann Arbor and how that applies to this NFL search, right? So he has to get the perfect situation, the perfect offer. It's got to be Michigan plus the chance to win a Super Bowl, right? So Brock, that's why this feels like it's Chargers or Michigan, right? I know we've seen reports that, maybe Washington kicked the tires or he'll talk to the Raiders. It's Chargers or Michigan because of the family situation. We've talked about that a bunch. I'm not going to rehash that, but like Aiden asks, why do we just assume Harbaugh gets the offer? The Chargers have interviewed, requested many, etc. We don't assume Harbaugh gets the offer.
Yeah.
We've talked about that before too. Jim Harbaugh has never received an NFL offer since getting to Michigan, right? So I don't think there's an assumption. I do think the Chargers are being very deliberate, right? They've interviewed a lot of GM candidates. I would argue with their current cap situation, the GM might be more important than the head coach hire, right? But they are taking this Harbaugh situation seriously. This isn't what I think the Broncos was, and then obviously the Vikings, again, not rehashing that. There does appear to be some legitimate mutual interest here. Mm-hmm. I do think this is the one job that Jim Harbaugh would leave for. I've never been in the any offer camp. I think this is the one that if they gave him everything he wanted. But how do you think that shapes things, Brock? Or the Chargers Michigan dynamic? Do you think Harbaugh might be willing to make some concessions to the Chargers to take this job? Or is this a situation where, like Josh said, this has to be the last time because he's at his peak, right? He just won a natty, right? If this is the time to leave, it makes sense. The Chargers are the job. So if this isn't it's got to be it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I agree with everything that Josh said, especially there at the end when you said, Josh, that you don't have a big opinion either way what happens, whether he goes or leaves. I completely agree with that statement because this year, this third go around, it's different than the first two because Michigan is now coming off a national championship. Harbaugh has brought Michigan to the peak of college football. You can't go up anymore from where you're at right now. If you're Michigan, you've reached the pinnacle, and you couldn't say that the last two off seasons when this was happening. And I think a lot of fans would have questioned the last 2 years if Harbaugh left, if his era at Michigan was even successful. He started 0-5 against Ohio State and really never brought Michigan to the peak of college football. And then if he would have gone to the NFL, it may have been questionable whether or not he was actually successful at Michigan. Now there is no doubt that he was successful at Michigan. You can't go any higher than winning a national championship, right? At least in college, that is. So I do think, in my opinion, I think he'd be willing to, like you said, Trevor, make some concessions here about that Chargers job. I don't think everything has to be exactly perfect. I think, it's been talked about. He wants to win a Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. And, he brought Michigan to the top. He won it all with Michigan. There's not much more left to do, in my opinion, other than win a second one, which, how much is that really going to mean compared to the first one? And I also think the fact that Sherrone Moore stepped in those last 3 games of the regular season might play a factor too, because I do think that Harbaugh wants to leave Michigan in a good spot. And I think he can do that. He can do that a lot more comfortably, knowing that Sherrone Moore went and beat Penn State in Happy Valley, beat Maryland for win number 1,000, and then beat Ohio State at home. I think he'd be much more willing to go take a job in LA, knowing that Sherrone Moore is there taking over. And I'm not an insider like Josh is or anything like that, but I am pretty certain that Sherrone Moore would be the guy to take over if Harbaugh were to leave. So that's kind of where I'm at. I really don't have a strong opinion. He's earned everything he has at this point. If he wants to go take an NFL job, then he should. And Michigan fans shouldn't be mad at him because he brought Michigan back to the top. And if he wants to stay, then great. Let's go try to win another one. I think that should be the mindset.
I think in 21, there was kind of this sentiment of like, whether it was, okay, we understand why you were frustrated by what happened with 2020, or, I've said, I think Harbaugh thought after that Georgia game that was the highest he could bring Michigan. I think he had this moment where that's what he believed, and that, you know what I mean? And he had done it. And then obviously he goes to Minnesota, and that experience is not what he expected. Right. And he did not want to be grilled in an interview. I think he thought he was going there to basically get the job. Right. So he leaves and says, Ward, I'm done with this. Right.
Yeah.
And then comes back in 2022, is successful, and they have a team that was capable of winning a national championship. And he has this realization of like, hey, we can win a national championship at Michigan. And that's why in 22, I mean, Josh's reporting was all over that. I know he had conversations with the Broncos, but he was telling people he was staying and he wasn't going anywhere. And like, it never felt like he was leaving. He knew what 23 could be. Right. And while he may still be sharing the sentiment that his intention is to stay, or that he'd like to stay, it does feel a little different. Whether the Chargers offer him or not, I don't know. I'm still torn on that. And again, we could get into the Chargers ownership and where they've been cheap and issues they've had, or where Harbaugh has a connection. I mean, there's so many elements to this, but the thing is, it's not going to be immediate, right? All reports from the NFL side, or people that come from the Michigan Harbaugh side, are Chargers are in no hurry. They're going to be deliberate. Like, this is probably going to take a little bit. Like, that's just where we're at. But Brock, I think you bring up a good point with knowing Moore is there for the handoff. Whether you believe DeBoer would have been a candidate or not, I mean, there's just no obvious other hiring candidate. It'd be weird to not take Moore. I think that's where it's going. So we wait, and then we'll analyze what we think it means for the future moving from there. But for now, we do know some future things when it comes to Team 145, right? So the big decision that we were waiting for was obviously JJ McCarthy. For a long time, it felt like things were trending where McCarthy would stay at Michigan, and how much he loved being at Michigan and the things he maybe still wanted to do. And we hypothesized, nobody knows how they're going to feel after winning a natty, right? Like, what is that going to do? And it became clear as the week went on towards the end with the celebration, Josh, that JJ felt like he did everything he needed to do at Michigan. I thought him wearing the business is finished hoodie was a statement in itself. People who saw his comments at the celebration kind of felt like this was coming, right? But hey, he's decided he's ready for the next phase of his life. He got engaged. They're going to move out to California while he gets ready for the draft, etc. But JJ ends up going to the NFL. He leaves undefeated against Ohio State, nothing but a Big Ten champion and a national champion. So while we debated maybe what coming back could do to his draft stock, in terms of his status as Michigan legend, it was all risk, right? Like, what else was he going to do if he came back, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's done everything that he can possibly do outside of winning a Heisman. But what's the point of coming back just to win a Heisman when, you're coming off a national title run? So, it's really not a big surprise that he left. I mean, it's a bit of a hit, but that's the kind of stuff that you brace for when you have good players. I mean, good players come and go. The sign of a good program is how you rebuild. I won't say like or bounce back. I don't know if I don't think it's a total from the bottom up rebuild, but reload. That's the word I was thinking of. It just wasn't clicking there, but reload. I think this is kind of a reload situation here. This is what good programs do. They take the losses, and that goes the same thing with the coaching staff as well. You take your losses and you fill it with equal or greater talent. You can't fill it with equal or lesser talent. I mean, I think, I'm pretty sure most Michigan fans were probably bracing for, once Michigan won the national title, they're probably bracing for this moment, life without JJ McCarthy. They were only going to have him for one more year anyway. So, I mean, we'll see what the future holds. Obviously, I think Alex Orji is probably going to look like the guy, at least for now. I think it's going to be probably an Alex Orji, Jaden Denegal type of battle in spring. I mean, Davis Warren coming back is helpful too. But I would not at all be shocked if Michigan goes quarterback in the portal in April, kind of evaluating what they have. And I'll probably mention this multiple times during this podcast, is that, they might wait until April to see what they have, or at least after spring ball to see what they have, and then evaluate the roster that way. So I mean, that was going to be the plan even before JJ left. I mean, there were going to couple of key positions. They were going to be like, hey, let's just see what we have after spring and go from there. That's why, they did have a couple of misses in the portal during the first window, but that's why they didn't really go very heavy. They only had a couple of select guys, and yeah, they had, decisions go the other way. But I think coming up, they're going to be much more aggressive, because they have some open spots that they can fill in the portal. And you never really know who pops up in the portal anyway. So, there might be someone tomorrow, like, I don't know, and I'm not saying it will happen, but like a Jalen Milroe pops up in the portal. Yeah, I think Michigan should absolutely go after him. And, I want to shout out someone real quick here, because I noticed him in the comments. Mr. Michael Barrett Sr., how are you doing, sir? Thank you for raising such a talented son. He is a baller. Wish him the best of luck in the NFL too. Yes, and what he says is 100% correct. Program is absolutely in great shape with leadership. There is experience, there's talent, and I think the good thing too about this program is that there's a lot of talent that still needs to be tapped into, which is big for this program too. And yeah, there is ways that you can supplement that talent with experience from the portal, but I'm not sitting here going, oh man, what is Michigan going to do? Oh, they're in so much trouble. Their defense, they had a lot of good announcements go their way on the defensive side of the ball too. Maybe more losses on the offense, but you can't keep guys for 10 years. This isn't the NFL where you can sign guys long-term.
Well, unless you're Casey Thompson.
Yeah, right. True. So you just have to trust the development of the coaches. I mean, they've developed the guys that left to be, national championship level talent. You kind of have to put the trust in that they can build it back up again. I mean, maybe, I'm not going to sit here and say Michigan's absolutely going to win the national championship again next year, but I still think they can be very good. And that's even with or without Harbaugh on the sideline. I think the culture is that good. And
that's funny.
I just think, yes, Michigan is in good hands. I think Mr. Barrett nailed it. And obviously no one would know better than any of us than Mr. Barrett for sure. So this is just what you do. This is the price of doing business. Just the same thing with Jim Harbaugh and what he's doing with the Chargers. This is the price of doing business when you're good. You're going to have guys leave, and to order to remain good, you have to plug and play. And I think that's what Michigan's going to do this year coming up. And obviously it's so very early, who knows what's going to happen between now and September in terms of additions and all of that. Opinions could change dramatically. So, it's very much wait and see. And I know right now it's like, oh boy, what is Michigan going to do without McCarthy? We don't know what Michigan's going to do. We don't know what the future holds for college football and in the transfer portal. So I think you can't go into fall camp with 4 quarterbacks, 3 of them true scholarship guys, with Davis Warren being a walk-on turned scholarship. You got to have depth there. So I think they'll address depth regardless. But I don't think it's all bad. I don't think it's all bad. Yeah, the next guy is probably not going to be JJ McCarthy, but who is going to be JJ McCarthy? Only JJ. You can't replicate that. So, it is what it is. It is what it is, and you just have to deal. I mean, I think this is what Michigan fans have to realize, that, when you're at this level, you just have to deal. You have to deal with guys leaving in the portal. You have to deal with guys leaving in the NFL. You have to deal with coaches going elsewhere. This is the price of doing business. I mean, look at Alabama. It happens all the time to them. They lose guys, they reload. Lose coaches, they reload. It just, when you're at the big boy table, people want to copy what you're doing. So you just kind of have to deal with it.
Brock, with the quarterbacks orgy, I think one thing that's got to be said is this coaching staff believes in Alex Orji and they believe in Jaden Denegal. Like, people need to accept that. Orji has not switched positions, and Denegal is the guy they talk about as a big, tall pocket passer with a good arm. So those two are obviously involved. Davis Warren coming back from a shoulder injury, and then whether the freshman Jaden Davis will be allowed to have a say in the competition or not, we will see. But in terms of, obviously, Josh is right. I think Michigan's going to address this in the portal after the spring. But in terms of what they have, if a starter is coming from this group, is there anybody that intrigues you? I mean, obviously we're speculating at this point, right? Other than one pass from Orji in the spring game, and we know he can run physically. We've seen that. But other than that, we're completely speculating on what these guys would be.
Yeah, I think the entire competition intrigues me. And I was just, while you guys were talking, I was looking up some stats here. Everyone talks about Alex Orji as the leading candidate. He's thrown one pass in his college career, and that was in 2022 for 5 yards. So I don't know. It's definitely going to be, like you guys said, something that the staff will need to address in the portal in the spring, at the very least for depth, if not looking for a starter. But it's going to be interesting. Alex Orji's a guy where he could. I've seen the comparison to Jalen Milroe, and I think it could work out. But is that the kind of offense that Michigan's going to want to run with, a quarterback that's so reliant on the run? How's that going to work with Donovan Edwards, Khalil Mullings, things like that? And, we haven't seen a lot of Jaden Denegal either. And I think that's something that, again, it's a little concerning. Davis Warren didn't look great in his limited action this season. I know, Trevor, like you mentioned, he was coming off that injury. Maybe he wasn't fully healthy, but
yeah,
it's those three guys and then a true freshman. And as highly touted as the true freshman Jaden Davis is, I don't know if he's going to be ready by week 2 to go in there and take on a Texas team. So it's tough. I'm very interested to see what they're going to do in the spring, but it's interesting. I don't know how else to describe it. There's 4 guys that really don't have a lot of experience, and they're going to need to go to the portal. And we just saw today that little Tua got his waiver denied, so he's off to the NFL and off the table.
Well, you mean honoring your brother isn't a reason to get a whole nother year of eligibility?
Yeah.
You got to bring better than that, man. I'm sorry. I mean, don't get me wrong. Alabama screwed him.
Yeah.
Okay, but anyway, not shocked to see that.
I want to add too. I mean, obviously in-game experience is the most weighted thing that you can, but you also have to think about the coaching staff also have 2 years of full 100%. Camp experience with these guys. So yeah, we might not have seen him throw, but the coaches have for 2 years. I mean, Alex Orji was a scout team quarterback for a while there, simulated Milroe in the Rose Bowl, and has done that a few times with mobile quarterbacks. So, it's not like he has never thrown a pass ever during his time at Michigan, but these guys have, and obviously Jaden Davis is going to be, a project new to this. So you don't really know what you're getting from a collegiate standpoint yet, but Orji and Denegal, I mean, you've seen this coaching staff has seen plenty of plays with them. It's going to look a little different now because you're not going to have the same wide receivers, mostly the same wide receivers, a brand new offensive line that you're going to have to build chemistry with. But I mean, at the end of the day, experience against teams other than your own is what means the most. But it's not like these guys are coming into the camp with not ever throwing a pass or not understanding the offense. I mean, these guys have a really good grasp of the offense. Just, on-field experience is kind of different. And yes, live experience is what matters most, but you got to have some sort of experience.
let's get through some of these positions that, like you're saying, we will have new and some we won't have changes. One, Michigan knows who their quarterback's going to be handing the ball to, right? So Donovan Edwards was one of the returns, which is obviously a big deal for Michigan to get him back. For those of you in the comments section, if you're watching here on YouTube, the way the scholarship chart is set up, the year is the class that they were committed to. If they have a plus sign, that's for COVID, extra year of eligibility. If they have the little asterisk star, that's for a red shirt. If you have any other questions while going through it, feel free to ask. But that's how I've got it broken down. And anybody in bold is in their last year of eligibility. So heading into next year, Josh, Edwards is back.
Yeah.
Kalel Mullings, I think we all know in limited usage the signs of him being potentially a really good running back. So maybe Mullings is RB1 and Edwards stays in a similar role or whatever, but you've got two really good options there. I think people are excited about Ben Hall being healthy based on what they saw in the spring. And then obviously Cole Cabana's still there as well. There's been some talk about him we might get into it. And then Jordan Marshall, when it comes to freshmen being able to play, I think he's one of the ones that you could say, hey, I could see him get onto the field. He has the talent. But this running back room, obviously, you don't easily replace the greatest running back in Michigan football history, right? Blake Corum is gone, but I think there's a lot of good things in this running back room, or at least things I feel good about.
Yeah, I think, the running back room is probably one of the better in terms of safer positions that Michigan has. Donovan Edwards, obviously coming back, is gigantic for this offense. Say what you will about his season, but, having a guy like that, a senior, experienced guy, you'd rather have him than not. Kalel Mullings really coming on strong to be that, that thumper back, that Corum-esque type of guy for short yardage. Ben Hall too can also play that role. So, I think Michigan is in a really good spot with running backs. Donovan Edwards and Kalel Mullings leading the way, but personally, I would like to see guys like Ben Hall and Cole Cabana get a little bit more run. I think Cabana is probably a little bit more of a finesse runner, but that's okay. He just needs to stay healthy. That's his problem. I mean, he spent the better half of last year injured. So, we'll kind of see there. I mean, if that trend kind of continues, Jordan Marshall, man, he's coming in the fall, but that kid's going to be a beast. A high character kid, really just embodies this current culture. And you can't forget about Apana too. He's got some skill as well.
Rocket ship.
Yeah, they're going to be young on the back end, but that's okay. Because you've got Donovan Edwards and Kalel kind of to offset that. But it's really tough to not look at the running backs and say, hey, that's probably Michigan's best position coming into this season. And hey, guess what? That's Michigan's bread and butter, running the football. So, having that
to be good at.
having that kind of depth, you don't really have to make wholesale changes in the way of your philosophy on offense too, because you've got similar style running backs. So, we'll obviously talk about it in the future too, but a new offensive line, it doesn't exactly help, but those guys have seen the field. Those guys have had years of development. If they don't come in and do well, I would be very, very surprised.
Aside from the interior defensive line, I think this is the position group that I'm most excited for in 2024. You've got the great 1-2 punch with Kalel Mullings and Donovan Edwards. And then you've got those four guys over there on the right, Ben Hall, Cole Cabana, Jordan Marshall, and Micah Kapana. Those four guys have so much potential.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you sprinkle them in along with Kalel Mullings and Donovan Edwards and rotate them in as kind of like a third back, and that's not to take anything away from Tavier Dunlap, but I do think it's pretty clear the four younger guys over there on the right have a little bit more potential than Dunlap does. You sprinkle those guys into the rotation along with Mullings and Edwards. I think that's a great running back room. We saw what Ben Hall can do in the spring game last year. Cole Cabana's had a lot of hype. Jordan Marshall won the Mr. Ohio Football Player of the Year, and Kapana's good too, right? Mike Hart loves him. We know that. So lots of potential there. I do think it's going to be interesting to see how the staff uses Mullings and Edwards. I think Toski is of the opinion that Mullings will actually be running back one.
RB1. Yep.
I tend to agree with him. I don't think Donovan Edwards is really a workhorse running back or a lead back in any offense, really. I just don't. I don't think he's a guy that you're going to turn around and hand the ball off to 25 times a game like you did to Blake Corum. I think we're going to see a lot of Khalil Mullings. Donovan Edwards will kind of, I think, maintain that home run role, if you will, that kind of lightning in the Thunder and Lightning. Khalil Mullings, someone mentioned in the comments, he'll kind of be like Hassan Haskins. I think that 100%. Thunder role and Donovan Edwards will be the Lightning. But yeah, really excited about the four young guys there in the 23 and 24 classes. I think sprinkle them in, keep them fresh throughout the season. It could work out really well.
Yep. No, I totally agree. And Edwards is such an interesting argument because I agree with what you said. I'm with Toski. I think Khalil Mullings is that RB1 in terms of the guy that you can count on in short yardage. He's going to get you 5 yards every time, get those extra yard or two. The Haskins comparisons are obvious. But Edwards, his best games are when you give him at least 15 carries. And he builds up and he works up to it. So, like, you could make the argument he's a better back when he gets more carries. So, yeah, I'm with you. That's a big storyline for me, how they use those two. We've seen Ben Hall and the talent he has. I think he's a factor. I've been on record. I think Jordan Marshall's the best running back in the class. Cole Cabana is going to be interesting how they use him. I wonder, as we get into this next position, if Cole is maybe a guy you consider using at wide receiver. Maybe not a full position switch, but he's a guy like Donovan early in his career where you wanted to get him out in space, right? And he was explosive in high school, returning, catching the ball, running, everything. So I'll be interested to see how they use him. But yeah, the wide receiver room, obviously on paper, not as positive as the running back room, right? So a lot of production is gone. Roman Wilson, Cornelius Johnson, your top 2 receivers headed to the NFL. Darius Clemens entered the portal. We've been talking about this already with him, separating who we thought he would be from who he's been. Right. This is a guy who's only had 6 targets in 2 years, a sophomore that hasn't really cracked into the 2 deep, was passed over by freshmen this year. So I'm as bummed as anybody. I've been hyping this dude up for 2 years. I wanted him to be that big X receiver, but I think Michigan looking in the portal, Jamal Banks was a name who did commit to Nebraska, but I think that's another place Michigan could look. But look, going into the year next year, the expectations are Tyler Morris, who we saw his speed against Alabama as a guy that takes a big leap in the Roman Wilson role as the Z receiver. We know Samaj Morgan is your starting slot at this point.
Yep.
Already good freshman year, maybe a sophomore leap. I think Fred Moore is probably the guy right now for the other wide receiver spot. But Josh, this is a room full of young, talented, frankly, very similar receivers, that 5'10" to 6 foot, 180-pound speedster guy. Talent, very, very little experience in production. Is this going to be Michigan like, hey, somebody break through here, somebody be the explosive guy? I mean, they were looking in the portal already. You got to assume that's going to continue, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is definitely a position that Michigan's going to address. They were tried to address it before. I think they need at least just one guy that's kind of over 6'3". They don't really need to just pile on and on the height, but at least one outside guy that has some height could really do them well. And I think you got to have to, if someone hits the portal that we aren't thinking about, but it'll definitely be something they address in April for sure. I'm hesitant to say this is Michigan's weakest position right now, because we don't really know, but I guess that fact alone is that we don't really know what this group can do kind of makes them the weakest. I think the unknown is kind of what sets this position group back a little bit. There's a lot of talent. I mean, we've seen it. Samaj, great. Tyler, obviously the leader. He's going to be the stalwart there. We've heard a lot of good things about Peyton O'Leary. We've seen it. He's kind of a lot like Darius Clemens, a guy who shows up in spring and
Peyton O'Leary season.
Yeah, kind of like a Darius Clemens, a guy who showed up a lot in spring, but not really kind of did much else than that. But I think the big thing here is that can these guys block? Can Fred Moore block? Can Carmelo English block? Can Kendrick block? I think Marion and Channing will probably have a little bit more time to develop, but if you can't block, you're not going to see the field. So this is kind of the big thing is we know Tyler can block. Samaj obviously can block as well. He's seen the field plenty of times, but I'm kind of looking at Fred and Carmelo and knowing that Kendrick too as well, of course, but those two guys have a lot of promise, and Kendrick, if you look at the Bell genes, he's going to make plays. It's just what happens. So, if that's this year, then yeah, that'd be great. I think if those three of Fred and Carmelo and Kendrick, and I'm not really necessarily saying anything that no one here doesn't know, but I think if these guys can step up, they're in a much better place now than they were coming out of the season. Just one of those three step up, I think they'll be fine. But the big key here is that can these guys block? And we don't really know that yet. So again, that kind of brings me back to the point where I think this is Michigan's weakest position group on offense, just because the sole fact of we haven't really seen these guys yet. And so will they address this position? Probably. I don't know if they'll get a grad transfer, a 2-year player, whatever. I think probably their best case scenario is bringing in a grad transfer just to kind of fill a temporary hole while these younger guys develop. But we'll see. A lot of unknowns, a lot of talent. It's not like these guys are bad players. There's a lot of talent there. We just don't really know what they can do. And, just blocking in this offense is so crucial. And it would go the same way if Harbaugh was here or if Sharon Moore is here. The identity is going to be the same. So, man, we'll see. I think there's talent. Yeah, it's not like this position group is void of talent. They've got guys. They just don't have experience. And yeah, the only way to get experience is to play them. So, they'll likely see time. It's just how does that position develop? We'll see. And I think also piggybacking off the running backs, if you have a good running game, the pressure of the receiving group comes off tenfold. We've seen it. If Michigan just moves the ball on the ground, you're not necessarily having to rely on your running backs you rely on your receivers. So there's plays to be made out there. It's just we'll kind of see who has developed on a faster track than anyone else. But I know, there's at least 2 guys you can rely on right now, maybe 3 with Peyton O'Leary, Tyler Morris and Samaj for sure. The rest of them are kind of question marks, and the only way to find out really is just to play them. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, this is a position that's right up there with quarterback where they're very inexperienced and young too. That's something else, maybe not about the quarterbacks. This is a young receiving core, and I think Michigan's going to have to, like you guys mentioned, hit the portal for a big frame, tall guy who's going to be able to go up there and win 50-50 balls if you throw them, or be able to outmuscle guys for a ball, things like that. I don't think you're going to see a lot of that from Tyler Morris or Samaj Morgan. They might even need 2, in my opinion. They might need 2 receivers from the portal. I just don't know. They're not going to be able to trust anyone really going in. Tyler Morris has 1 career touchdown. That one in the Rose Bowl, I think, was his first career touchdown. And Samaj Morgan has, 3, 4? So, and I know O'Leary had 1 in garbage time against Nebraska, but it's a very, very inexperienced group. If I'm being honest, I don't think Peyton O'Leary is going to be a factor in 2024. We've heard a lot about him, especially, when he's performed well in the spring game, but I just don't think he's going to be much of a factor. Maybe I'll be wrong, but I just don't see it. I think we're going to need to see a big step up from Fred Moore, Carmelo English, big sophomore jumps, Kendrick Bell too, and even from Samaj Morgan. I know he played really well as a freshman, got a lot of playing time, but he's going to need to take a step too. I just don't see how they can go into 2024 with Tyler Morris as wide receiver 1 and Samaj Morgan as wide receiver 2. I don't think that's a recipe for success, especially with Texas looming in week 2.
Sorry, guys, I'm having a weird computer issue here, so I might have to back out and come back in a second. But I'm less concerned about the top with Tyler Morris and Samaj Morgan as I am everyone else, because we talked about Michigan and what they do in the transfer portal and bringing in experience and competition, so that, look, we've got these guys that are talented. We think they can be the guys to take the next step. We just don't want to need them to do that. Right. So that's where I think it gets interesting. Obviously, if Kendrick Bell turns out to be a taller version of his brother, then cool. Right. Yeah. Fred Moore's a guy that can take a step. English, maybe. But yeah, there's just complete unknowns there. And that makes it really interesting. So, and yeah, I think it looks like this is what I'm going to have to do. So if you guys, I hate to do this to you, but if you
we got tight ends next.
Yeah, tight ends next. So the thing I was going to talk about, I don't have it in front of me now because of the computer issue, but Colson Loveland, sneaky, if you will, matched Jake Butt. Jake Butt's best season. So we're talking about receivers and that big body guy that can win a 50-50 ball, etc. Colson Loveland was already the number 2 receiver this year.
Yeah.
He's got a chance as the top tight end next year. I know AJ Barner, but with this receiver room, is Colson Loveland just going to be the dude across the board in the passing game?
It's highly likely. I mean, yeah, as you mentioned, I mean, he's the number two receiver. So having that is fortunate. It takes a little bit of pressure off the receivers, but man, I think that, yeah, I don't know if he's going to be that outside presence that, you know, that many, I know a lot of people in the comments have mentioned too, that can you stretch him out wide? I think he's too good of a blocker, both in the run game and the pass game, to do that. I mean, yeah, there's probably some situations where you can bump him out wide, and it's happened before, but man, he's such a good blocker, efficient blocker, willing to just throw his body at anyone. I think that really bodes really well for Michigan's passing game. So I'm distracted by Trevor's frozen face, so I'm going to remove him from the stage here. So yeah, I think obviously we know we've got a known commodity. We know of Loveland. The big question is, what do they do behind him? And a running theme of this offense is that, you know, they've got guys, but guys that won't necessarily don't necessarily have the time, have the time on task. They've got guys, a Zach Marshall comes to mind, a Marlon Klein, who the staff is really, really high on Marlon Klein. They think he's a freak offensively. So he's going to be, unless barring someone that, if he hits the portal or something, I'm not saying that's going to happen, he should be a guy that sees some time too. So again, we know what Colston is. Max Bredesen, thank you for bringing up the chart here. You're also muted. You want to hear my hot take? My hot take for this team: Brady Prescorn is going to see time as a true freshman, and he's going to be, I think, better than Colson Loveland.
Whoa!
I know that's a hot take. Not this year. I'm not saying this year.
That went from mild to
in his career. And Colson Loveland is damn good. I think Brady Prescorn is a stud, capital S. So having him as an early enrollee, huge. And I think he's going to jump over Zach Marshall and Deacon Tonielli this year. Both of those guys are I've heard that they're coming along, but need a little bit more time.
Yeah.
But Prescorn as just a pure receiver, if you need that guy, if we're talking about wide receivers, Brady Prescorn's your guy. He's a very good receiver, efficient receiver. Hogan Hansen, the same thing, a good receiver, efficient receiver, maybe won't be your inline blocking guy like what Max and Colson can provide for you, but both capable receivers. So you can kind of offset your deficiencies at wide receiver with tight end. And with that, I don't think Michigan needs to go to the portal with experience. I think you give Marlon Klein your shot.
Yeah.
I think, you've got a guy like Max Bredesen, and then Josh Beetham also backs up Max Bredesen, who's also a very kind of a similar guy. So that I think I am that high on Brady Prescorn.
It's pretty high.
It's pretty high, folks. I mean, it might epically blow up in my face and make me look like an idiot. It wouldn't be the first time that I've been an idiot, but I just think Brady Prescorn is going to be that good, and that good of a prospect. I just think he's going to be the gem of the class. Personally, I think so. I really like what they have at tight end. I don't think they need to go to the portal. I think they've got enough to lean on here. Obviously, that ultimately depends on who they lose, if they lose anyone after the spring. But right now, if this is your tight end group heading into the season, I think Michigan will be fine with that. I think you absolutely take that.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be the Colson Loveland show. I think unless he gets injured or something, I think he's going to run the show at tight end. Marlon Klein might get his shot early in the non-conference schedule, but it's going to be Colson Loveland basically every down for the most part. And I'm a little bit on the opposite side of the fence as you are, Josh, in terms of Brady Prescorn. I think that Hogan Hansen is going to turn out to be more productive in his Michigan career than Prescorn will be. That's just my opinion. I'm really high on Hansen, not as much as you are on Prescorn, but yeah, same thing. Zach Marshall, Deacon Tonielli might need a little bit more time to develop. I do want to talk a little bit about Max Bredesen because he was a guy that was so important to Team 144, and he didn't get hardly any credit for the role that he played. He was essentially a fullback for the most part. Mm-hmm. He loved blocking, and you could see it. Yep. He just loved to run into guys and hit them and run them over. And it was fun to watch. And it's great that he'll be back next year. I don't think he's going to be necessarily a pass catcher or be featured in that type of role, but he played a significant role for Team 144 in helping them win a national championship. And I think if he's that enthusiastic next year, even though Blake Corum isn't coming back, and maybe Corum did get a lot of the credit on he scored the touchdowns and Bredesen was blocking for him, things like that. If he's there again next year, I think Michigan's run game is going to be just close to as good as it was last year. It won't be as good because Corum's not back, but Bredesen played a huge role. I just wanted to give him a little shout out because he deserves a lot of credit for how successful the Michigan run game was. But yeah, Colson Loveland, he's going to be the main guy in 2024. And I agree with Josh. I don't think they need to go to the portal. I think Loveland's good enough where he can be the guy, the starting tight end for all 12 regular season games. And maybe Klein gets thrown in there a little bit, Prescorn, Hansen, whoever it may be. But yeah, I didn't realize that Brandon Mann was a tight end. I know he was a quarterback, and then I thought he switched over to defensive safety. Back. I didn't know he then moved to tight end.
Yeah, he's now listed as a tight end.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a big dude too. And I mean, yeah, Bredesen deserves his shout out. You're 100% right. Steve said he has to grade out well. His blocks are textbook. Yeah, my line all year has been he'd be the best blocking non-offensive lineman if AJ Barner didn't exist. 1 and 2, Power 5 blocking tight ends in college football last year. AJ Barner and Max Bredesen. So pretty amazing. Marlon Klein, we've been hearing about in a couple of years. I think he's going to be the guy that the bigger body fill that AJ Barner role for sure. You know, of the young group, Deacon Tonielli is big. He added a ton of weight coming in as a freshman. So he's a guy I think could be involved in the blocking game. And if I have to break the tie between Prescorn and Hansen, I think a lot of people, you guys represent the fan base. There's people big on Brady and people big on Hogan Hansen. So I'm not going to break the tie. I think they're both going to be very, very good.
Yeah, and both will be utilized. It's not like one is going to be utilized over the other. They're both going to play at some point.
They're kind of different players too, but
right.
I wanted to hit on this before we moved offensive line because I froze, but 45 receptions, 649 yards, and 4 touchdowns. That's player A. Player B, 51 receptions, 654 yards, and 3 touchdowns is player B. Player A is Colson Loveland. Player B is Jake Butt's best season at the University of Michigan. And that's with Roman Wilson, Cornelius Johnson. So if his targets do go up, the way we talk about Colson Loveland in the history of Michigan football, yeah. All right, let's move to another. We've got the offensive line and the entire defense to go. So let's move to the offensive line here. So many starters have left. I can't even fit them all on the screen there. So we said at the beginning of the year that this offensive line could put 6 to 7 players in the NFL draft. The number is 6. Miles Hinton, will be back. Ladarius Henderson was out of eligibility. Keegan decided to go. Not going to do a 6th year. Nugent, Zach Zinter, we knew. Barnhart, and then I think maybe the one surprise was Trente Jones. I think people thought maybe he would come back and be that starting right tackle. Again, another position group where talent, not a ton of experience, literally replacing all of your starters, right? We already have one incoming transfer, Josh Preby, a guard from Northwestern. Have to figure him and El Hadi are your left and right guard in some combination. They both have played a lot of left guard, so I'm not sure how that'll shake out. And then Miles Hinton coming back, obviously, got to think he's probably a favorite for left tackle. But yeah, your most experienced players are both people that have transferred in, right? Yeah. But look, if we go down this list, we've been hearing about Greg Crippen for the last couple of years. They get Olu, they get Drake Nugent. He was right there with Nugent last year by all accounts. Raheem Anderson, another guy that if Olu, and Nugent don't come in, maybe Anderson gets more playing time. Andrew Gentry, a former top recruit, came in a couple years late because of the mission trip. And then the obvious, the 5 new, the blue wall of the 2024 recruiting class, how they may factor into this year, right? Freshmen, we can talk about that. But Josh, a lot of topics here, but when you look at this offensive line group, what sticks out? What's a concern? Is this another portal need potentially with no tackles, but Hinton coming back?
Yeah, I think they'll be fine. I'm not really worried about the group. I think it'll probably be from left to right. My best guess would be Miles Hinton, Gio, Crippen.
You don't think Preby's the other guard?
Oh yeah, Sorry.
Softball.
Staring right at his the
right tackle is probably
Gentry.
the biggest question.
My money's on Gentry being the tackle. Now, Harbaugh's talked about him all year, like that we need to get him on the field because he's that good. Mm-hmm. So with that kind of line of thinking, I think he's ready for a starting role. But there's a lot of names there. I mean, Percy has seen a lot of time relative to everyone else.
Does have a career start, and he played very well in that game that he started.
Yeah, yep. Raheem Anderson can effectively jump Crippen. I think Crippen is. I'm ready to put his name in ink on the depth chart. I think he was darn close to beating out Drake Nugent in the fall, but Crippen is due. A lot of these guys are just due. El Hadi. No one else is more due than he is. So
he starts on 95% of college football offensive lines. Right? Yeah.
You've got a really good mix of youth and experience. Prebe obviously. I don't know how to say his name. Is it Prebe?
I haven't seen Prebe, but I said Trente Jones' name wrong for 3 years. So
yeah, there you go. You got called out for it too.
I swear I looked it up because I heard somebody say Trent, and I'm like, oh, he says Trent. Okay. But anyway.
I'm sure someone in the comments will. A combination of guys who have played. Preby obviously is the top dog in terms of experience, but El Hadi is going to give you a ton of experience on the left side. There's just a lot of names that make sense that you could see jumping. And obviously you like the young guys too, and you can give them time to kind of develop a little bit. They're not as deep as they were last year, but that's okay. If they can stay healthy, I think, I think they're in a good spot. These guys have been developed for this reason. So, we talk about Michigan's development and offensive line all year. If it's for real, we'll see. We'll see these guys and kind of see how it goes from there. But a lot to like. I don't think they need to address. I think the addition of Preeb is the addition they needed to make. And barring something crazy, with this group, I think we're good. But a lot of names to like, and a lot of guys that will come up in the future. I mean, Andrew Sprague, excuse me, is going to be good. It's going to be really good. Amir Herring is going to be good once he gets his technique and fundamentals down. Connor Jones, another guy. Evan Link is a guy that I've heard that they really like too. So it shouldn't come as a shock that Michigan's in really good hands in terms of offensive linemen, despite losing 6 guys. 6.
Unbelievable.
Your whole starting line is gone +1. So a lot to like there. I'm not very worried about the offensive line, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think it's a good group. I don't think it's anywhere as deep as it was this past season. Harbaugh said before the year started that they had 10 starting offensive linemen, or maybe that was Sharon Moore. I can't remember. It was one of the two.
They probably both said it.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, 10 starting offensive linemen, and you see that with 6 of them going off to the draft. But I don't think there will be too much of a drop off, honestly, next year. I agree with Josh. I think it'll go Hinton. I think it'll go El Hadi, then Crippen, Preeb, and then Gentry. I do think they might hit the portal. Kind of play it how they did last year. Kind of bring some guys in and let them challenge and make each other better. I don't think they're going to be content with sticking with who they have. And I think they might, they brought in Henderson, they brought in Hinton, and it made everyone better, right? And maybe it didn't work out best for a guy like Trente Jones, but here he is going to the NFL. And I think everyone got better because of it. Competition amongst teammates sometimes is the best kind, right? So I do think they might go to the portal, try and bring some guys in and make everyone better that way. But yeah, I think it's a good group. Crippen and El Hadi have been waiting a long time for this. So I give them a lot of credit for sticking around and not entering the portal like a lot of guys could have and probably would have. So lots of credit to them. And I do think it's a good group. I'm excited to see who they bring in, because I do think it'll be at least one person, maybe at tackle. Because I don't know if I know you guys said they like Gentry, but I don't know if he might be ready for something like that. So yeah, excited to see what they do going forward.
I kind of think he has to be, right? We're talking about a former top 100 recruit. This will be, now 3 years, this 3rd season in the program. So I'm with you. I do think Gentry is a guy to watch, but again, do we know he will be? To your credit, Brock, yeah, we don't, right? Amir Herring, I think, is a really good shout out. Tristan Bounds is a dude that has all the potential in the world to be a really, really good tackle, and he's been blocked the last couple of years. Maybe he breaks through with the opportunity. I never like picking a freshman on the offensive line to be a contributor. I was trying to think back to this on a Twitter space the other day, and I think Mason Cole getting the surprising start at left tackle was maybe the last time that's happened. That said, I've already seen some comments. I agree 100%. I think Andrew Sprague is that dude. I think he's going to be the next great left tackle at Michigan. I've seen some comments about adding weight. He will be 320 by the time he gets here. I have no doubt in my mind about that. 6'8". Cracking the 2 deep, I think, is more realistic. Like becoming a starter would be outlandish with the people ahead of him, but that's a guy like I've got them in order of how I think they're going to play down the road. I think Sprague's the left tackle, Hamilton guard, Gardera, we know center. I've made the comp between Frazier and Zinter a bunch of times, right? He's the tiny guy at 6'4", 270 or whatever of this group, right? And Ben Roebuck's another 6'8" monster. So that's a really talented group for down the road. But I think, yeah, I'm with you. If they went and got a tackle, I'd be fine with it and I would trust it, but I also don't think I'd freak out if they didn't. So my biggest question mark for this group, obviously moving forward, assuming Jim Harbaugh stays, goes, whatever, I would like to see in what other fashion, obviously if Sharon becomes the head coach, I think he would relinquish it. But I think Grant Newsome is probably ready to become the offensive line coach. And I would love to see, if Harbaugh is back, Sharon Moore not have to be OC, sole play caller, and offensive line coach. You could move him back to tight end, a position he's coached in the past. And I wonder if that's just something to be considered that could be a good across the board. That'd have to be a situation if Harbaugh and Sherrod Moore believe Newsome is ready, which there's been some suggestion they think he is. I think that's something when the coaching shifts start happening, it'd be interesting to see if they consider. But all right, a lot of questions on the offensive side. On the defensive side, yes, questions, but if we're talking about concern or unknowns, not a ton. This defense is set up to be elite again in 2024. So defensive tackle, Brock, you already said it, probably the strength of this team this year, probably the strength of the team next year. Chris Jenkins is heading to the NFL. Cam Good, who ended up becoming a really, really useful contributor on this team when a lot of people thought he was just going to be a transfer depth piece. That said, Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant are back. That's the best defensive tackle combo in college football. There's no doubt in my mind about that. A healthy Rayshon Benny comes in. And there's a lot of young dudes here to be excited about. Josh, I know you're a Trey Pierce fan. You've brought him up before. Reese Atterbury made the switch from offensive line, But that being said, similar to the offensive line, except for we've got the experience with Graham and Grant. But what sticks out to you with this group? And I don't know if I need to ask about transfer portal. This isn't a group I think we need to address.
No. I think it starts and stops with Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. Just studs. The strength. They need to get as many snaps as they can. Adding a Rayshon Benny once he gets healthy is going to be great because he's going to get more time. I think the best case scenario for him is that his injury isn't necessarily super long term. I don't know if it's going to be enough to get him back by spring, but he'll be at least in rehab by the time spring rolls around. I think that extra month might give him some time enough to where he can participate, but we'll see, obviously. But man, Trey Pierce, I love that kid. I think he's going to be a beast here eventually. Awana really kind of reminds me of a Cam Good type of role where he can come in and no one really talked about him. No one really expects him to do much.
He'll be an explosive pass rusher.
Yeah, but he could be a guy that they rely on to kind of spell Graham and Grant a little bit. So I obviously it starts and stops with Graham and Grant. I mean, we know what they are. That is a known commodity. That's probably going to be the best tackle. Not probably. It is the best tackle duo in the country coming back. So outside of the depth, I mean, Ted Hammond is getting Beagle is going to be, or excuse me, Bagel. It's Beagle.
It's not Bagel.
It's not Bagel. Yeah. Beagle. Or Beigel. I'm sorry. It's Beigel. It's Beigel. It is Beigel. It is Beigel. The Beigel's a really intriguing guy because we don't really know if he's going to be on defense or is he going to move to offense. He's going to at least get some run on defense. He's going to be interesting. Brooks Bars put on a ton of weight.
Yes.
Yeah, Trey Pierce. I'm really high on Trey Pierce. I think my two names that will really come out of the woodwork is Trey Pierce and Ike Awana. And I'm really curious to see what Etta does. I mean, he's a big dude, but I don't know if he's going to be an edge guy or moved into.
I've got him listed as edge. I'll explain why.
Yeah. I mean, and they obviously shuffle guys around on the defensive line too. So, it's okay to not have a defined role for a guy like him. But we'll see about Atterbury. A guy that has converted the defensive line so late in his career. Harbaugh has a knack of putting guys in spots where we're like, well, we'll see what happens. I mean, I kind of said that when Mikey moved from wide receiver to DB, and we saw what happened there. I think he has a knack of finding spots for these guys. So if you really want to go get experience, you can add a nose tackle, but I don't see outside of Graham and Grant, they're going to want to play, and they're going to play a lot, and they're going to be relied on. I don't think they really need to add much depth. I mean, it kind of depends on what Rayshon Benny's status is, but I think he'll be fine. They've got guys. They just need to play. And again, I've said this like 8 times tonight with all these position groups. They just need to play. And I think, with guys like Chris Jenkins and Cam Good leaving, you've kind of opened yourself up to getting a little bit more depth and rotation with some younger guys that will bode well for their futures too. So we'll see. But yeah, I think Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant are the probably the best tackle duo in the country right now.
I almost wonder if we just talked about the offensive line and maybe the little bit of lack of depth there. I almost wonder if Reese Atterbury considers moving back to the offensive line because, I kind of agree with Josh. I don't know if it's going to work out for him there, but I think you guys hit it. Graham and Grant, there's no 2 better defensive linemen in college football, and Rayshon Benny's right there with them. Hated to see him go down in the Rose Bowl game. That was tough to see. I saw someone in the comments asked about who the 4th defensive tackle would be, and at this point, I'd have to go with Trey Pierce. I think he's going to be solid as a sophomore. Are we listing Cam Brandt in the edge group?
Yep, and same thing as that, and I'll explain why.
Okay, all right, yep. But yeah, Trey Pierce, I'm high on him too, Josh. And I thought it was funny you guys were talking about Bagel and him listed 2 below. I know it's pronounced waffle, but Owen Waffle. I thought
we could have had a waffle and a bagel, and we got
you guys were making me hungry talking about bagels and seeing waffles on the screen. But yeah, I'm excited about this group. I do think it's going to be the one of the better position groups on the team, right up there with safety, corner, depending on who wins that job alongside Will Johnson. But the defense as a whole, I mean, I know we're going to get into it, in the next few minutes here, but it's going to be incredible. I don't think there's going to be much. There will be a little bit because they did lose a lot of talent, but I don't think there's going to be much of a drop off between this year's team and next year's team, especially if they keep Minter. If they don't, maybe there will be, but if Minter's back, I definitely expect the defense to dominate once again.
Yeah, that's the biggest question for this defense, right? Is Jesse Minter, who at this point, you look at the Eagles, interviewed him last year. They go with Sean Desai, and for some reason in the back half of the year decide, hey, this Matt Patricia guy is who we want. So they literally might circle back to Minter this year. That's how bad their defense imploded. But on the flip of that, Mike McDonald probably getting a head coaching gig, so Baltimore's open. Mike McDonald would be really smart to hire Jesse Minter if he does get a head coaching gig. If Jim Harbaugh goes to the Chargers, he probably likes Jesse Minter, as I think a lot of the staff would say Minter's probably a guy that could go. The Cowboys I've mentioned, Cincinnati could open where he grew up. Like, Minter's going to have a lot of options, right? So, but yeah, I'm with you. This group starts with Graham and Grant, and that's enough for me. Those 2 as juniors is just almost unbelievable to think about. They're going to be unreal. I think Benny is going to step in and really own that 3rd role. I'm with you on Pierce. Of the young guys, Owen Waffle's tape is outrageous.
Yeah, he's going to be good.
And
he's going to be good.
I've already done it with Blake Corum and Jake Butt and Zach Zinter comparisons. But if you watched Mason Graham's high school film and you watched Owen Waffle, there are some comparables. I'll say that. Right? I'm not saying he's going to have a Mason Graham freshman year, but like if you're looking for that young guy that might be physically ready, I like Owen Waffle a lot. But again, with Graham, Grant, and Benny, I just don't see a reason for a young guy to get a ton of snaps early. But yeah. All right, let's talk about edge, what we know, and then I'll get into some of the categories that I've done here. So you lose Braden McGregor. You lose Jalen Harrell, your leading sack getter, barely had 7.5. Braden McGregor was just a dog all year, whether he showed up on the stat sheet or not. He did show up on the stat sheet multiple times. But you are very excited that Josiah Stewart is coming back. Stewart's a guy that was Michigan's best pass rusher since Nebraska, arguably. I'm already calling it double-digit sacks for him next year. He had double-digit sacks in his freshman year. I think he's really going to be a machine with another offseason with Michigan, your weak side starter. And then Derek Moore is going to be your full-time strong edge starter. So the sophomores of Graham, Grant, and Derek Moore is unreal, right? Michigan's got size, speed, athleticism there. I think TJ Guy is probably going to get his chance now to really get in the rotation as the other weak side guy.
Yep.
This is where Cam Brandt and, Etta come in. I think they both have a legitimate shot as the backup strong side edge. Now, people have asked about them being defensive tackles. Based on where they played last year, this is where I'm going. Both Brandt and Etta, with the snaps that they played, took significant snaps only over tackle, so i.e. like 5 technique, like a 3-4 defensive end or even outside that, or literally outside the tackle, which is a true edge. So Brandt played a lot more than Etta. All of his snaps, which rank up about 60, were tackle or outside. Etta in pass rush only had 9 snaps, also tackle and outside. So these guys have not taken interior snaps in their freshman year.
Yeah.
They both kind of remind me of potentially a Chris Jenkins, right? Who eventually moved in to the interior full time, but he was kind of that hybrid defensive end tackle for a little bit with the need for the strong edge. And again, both of them easily could move inside. I wouldn't be shocked, but just based on how they've been used so far, I've got them in the edge category moving forward. So Josh, again, Stewart and Moore lead this group, but man, there are a lot of young dudes in here. I didn't even bring up Breon Ishmael, who added a bunch of weight coming in. Keyshawn Bennett has played some snaps, and then obviously a very good class of edge players. I can talk about Cole Sullivan being included there in a moment as well. But
yeah, no, I just to go on that, I really like their freshman class they brought in. A lot of promise. They're going to have to add
that
some
Maryland
size.
pipeline, man.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what Cole Sullivan ends up doing. Is he a true edge, or do they bump him back to linebacker?
Yeah.
But man, yeah, a lot to like on the defensive line as a whole. I mean, depth is there, promise is there. Etta, he's got the goods to be very good.
Yes, he does.
Breon Ishmael, just big boy. That's a big boy. Beef. And yeah, TJ Guy is probably going to be, I think he's in line for a breakout year. This might be a hot take, but I think Derek Moore is better than Josiah Stewart. And that's not to say that they're bad. I just think Derek Moore has more, will have more of a successful year than Josiah Stewart. And again, I think both guys are going to have a very good year. It's a good problem to have, but I just think Derek Moore is going to be better. So man, a lot to like. There's youth there. There's experienced youth. There's just so much to like. And a team that. Again, can rotate. If you can get some guys that you rely on, like a TJ Guy, a Keyshawn Bennett, even an Etta, Cam Brandt, both just having that group of 4 guys that you can rotate in and out, I think you're going to be just fine on your edge group. And that this team this defensive line is really going to not necessarily make or break this offense. I think that kind of goes into where they go next at defensive back outside of Will Johnson. But you can really, again, control the line of scrimmage, and I think you're going to be just fine. And they've got the goods, first, second, third team goods to really be able to spell the guys like Josiah Stewart, Derek Moore, Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, just having guys that you can spell and give them a break. We're not even talking about the Kumbas too, who could come in and play at some point. He's a bit of a project, but who better to work on him than Mike Elston, right? I mean, we'll see, but yeah, there's so much to like with this edge group and defensive tackle group. I mean, this is. Yeah, you lose Braden McGregor. Yeah, you lose Jalen Harrell. Yeah, you lose Chris Jenkins and Cam Good. But I think this group can be better, if not as good or better. I think they've got the talent. And now I hate to call them roadblocks, but, the roadblocks for these younger guys to see the field are out of the way. And now you can kind of get him out there. And thank you to Shadyville too, who says that you trust Coach Elson and Roney. Yeah, still in Roney too. A big, just a big positive presence for Michigan there. So yes, thank you for including him too.
That might be
deserves a shout out.
That might be your next linebacker coach. We'll see how that shakes out, but I would not be surprised if he got that gig.
Would not be shocked.
Players talk about him all the time. Recruits talk about him all the time. So yeah, deserves a shout out. But Brock.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get a big four as we saw this past year with McGregor, Harrell, Stewart, and Derek Moore. I don't think you're going to have four guys that'll contribute that much, but I do think this group is going to be deeper. You know what you're going to get with Josiah Stewart, and you know what you're going to get with Derek Moore. Those are two guys that are proven, and they're going to be the top two guys going into 2024. I'm really high on three guys, and I think it's almost in three different levels. I'm high on TJ Guy.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to take a big step in 2024 and prove himself as that third pass rusher. I'm also high on Cam Brandt. I think, as a sophomore, he may not make a huge impact, but I think he's going to be a guy who will be there in the rotation. I like his game a lot. Not as high on Eno Etta, but I think he could be a guy that'll rotate in there and give Derek Moore and Josiah Stewart, TJ Guy, a little bit of a break. And I'm also really high on Imeric. Is that how you pronounce it? Imeric Kumba?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Again, I'm probably not the guy to ask, but
he's a player, and I think he might be a year away still. Like you mentioned, Josh, he's a little bit of a project. I think 2025, he's a guy that might just explode in
he's got David David
Ojabo type of role where almost no one knows his name in 2024, but 2025 he could burst onto the scene and really, really make a big impact. So excited about him. But
that's a good comp. That's a good comp, Brock.
Thanks.
You won't get bullied in the comments for that one.
All right, good. I apprite it.
Did you get bullied again?
No, I haven't seen it.
Right.
He's wearing a hat.
He's wearing a hat tonight.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, I haven't even talked about Keyshawn Bennett, Tyler McLaurin. Bennett's gotten a few more snaps than McLaurin has, if I'm not mistaken. But I do think you're going to see a deeper group, a little bit more rotation in 2024 than in 2023. I think mainly they stuck with the four guys, McGregor, Harrell, Stewart, and Moore for the most part. They kind of just brought two in for a few plays and then brought the other two back in and kind of rotated that way. I think you're going to see Stewart and Moore as the surefire starters, but TJ Guy is going to rotate in there a lot. Brandt and Etta too. I think they have a lot of depth, and I think they're in a good spot. Cole Sullivan, I was interested to see him here at edge. I thought was he listed as a linebacker coming out of high school?
Yeah.
Okay.
He says that they're going to try him at edge first.
That's interesting. I'm interested to see how that'll go. I see him more as a linebacker, but I don't know football. I'm no staff member. I trust what they're going to do with him. So really excited about the edge group.
He's 6'5" already, and he was like just a little over 200, and they were playing him like a Mike linebacker, and they said, that's where he could be. But yeah, that's a frame that's going to fill out to 240, 250 most likely. And again, let me keep these big name comps going. But the kid from Pittsburgh reminds me of another kid from Pittsburgh who played linebacker and tight end in high school, Chase Winovich.
Yep.
When you watch his tape, it's his biggest moments are in pursuit into the backfield, whether it's getting a tackle for loss or getting a sack, and he's a physical tackler. And again, we'll see. This Michigan recruits versatile players. You see how they develop, how their frame fills out. But for now, he looks like a surefire weak side edge to me. That whole group, man, Baxter and Nichols are two really, really good players out of Maryland that could have an impact. I think getting Lugard Edekpe was a sneaky late ad. Yeah. That dude has length, man. Yep. We made the Ojabo comp with Kumba that could probably be similar there, where maybe he needs a year or two, but oh my God, the tools that kid's got. I think I agree and disagree with you at the same time, Brock. Like, I think Stewart and Moore are going to lead the show. There's just too much of a gap between the guys behind them to have the equal rotation we saw with the four. I don't know if that'll lead to more rotation or less then. Like when they do come off, are they going to play? Like, are they going to rotate Guy and some other dudes? It'll be interesting to see what happens there. But Josh, you're not wrong to go with Moore as maybe being a better player. This year, Stewart graded out as the second best defender behind only Mason Graham, but in pass rush, man, Derek Moore was behind Mason Graham and Jalen Harrell. He had 6 sacks, 26 pressures, just a really good all-around edge defender. And that junior leap it seems likely. So yeah, I just having both of those, I think, is where it starts with this group. And man, am I excited about the potential of it. So yeah, how they rotate will be a storyline, obviously, but I've got no concerns about that group. Linebacker, you would think concern would be high after losing two established starters, Junior Colson and Michael Barrett. Colson, I think we probably saw coming largely because of the addition of Jayshon Barham from Maryland. I've told you I'm always a little biased to a dude I've watched play well against Michigan. So he had the only interception against JJ McCarthy that was not against Bowling Green. So there you go, that red zone pick. Michael Barrett, I mean, on and off the field, I don't know how you replace Michael Barrett.
You can't.
You know, there is a leadership void, I think, with this group. Not that there won't be captains, but just the kind of leader that somebody like Michael Barrett was. I like Ernest Hausmann coming in. I think him and Barham are going to be a really good duo. I was so excited when they got Barham. But Colson and Barrett, I mean, those are just their major losses. They are. Jaden Hood, is he going to be a guy that, you know, we heard good things leading all the way up to the season? Can he step in and rotate with Hausmann? Jimmy Rolder, a guy we've heard a lot of good things about, dealt with some injuries, and unfortunately got thrown to the wolves guarding Kate Stover in man coverage against Ohio State, right? And then again, I know people like to talk crap about Michigan's recruiting, but hey, here's another group of talented sophomores and freshmen where we can start picking out dudes that might be able to break out.
Yeah, I'm not concerned with the linebackers. I think they've got top end talent, and again, it just comes down to the unknowns. The Jaden Hoods, is he going to live up to the expectations? What does Samaj Bridgman do after a year? A Jason Hewlett that the guys have been, the staff has been really high on. It just depends on how these guys behind the Ernest Hausmanns and Barham kind of perform. Jimmy Rolder been hurt all year, so I don't really really have an opinion on this year that what he had. I mean, the whole, was injured, then he had the red shirt because of that. I'm not really too worried about that. I think he'll be just fine if he can stay healthy this year. He's going to get some run. Micah Pollard, probably another guy too. And one guy I'm really interested in is Hayden Moore. I think he could be a guy that's really intriguing. And I don't, the Mason Curtis, he might be a guy that turns into an edge prospect too. I mean, it could go the opposite way where he goes to the edge and Sullivan bumps back out to linebacker. But this group, there's no denying this group runs through Ernest Hausmann and Barham. I mean, I think Barham is going to be an excellent addition to this group. Obviously, and I'm not just saying this because Mike Barrett Sr. has been in the chat here. You can't replace Mike Barrett.
I think he might be gone, so we don't have
if he's gone, good. He's gone. Mike Barrett, he's terrible.
I kiss his ass plenty with text messages, so don't worry.
No, there's no replacing what Barrett has meant to this program on and off the field. So to see some level of drop off is to be expected, especially from a leadership standpoint. Junior Colson, just a dog, a warrior of the highest degree.
Clubs.
It's two oven mitts on his hand. That guy, you could chop his legs off and he'd be running around on bloody stumps and he'd still play. He's just that reliable. Again, like Barrett, you can't really replace him on and off the field. So you kind of expect some level of drop off from the group. However, it is kind of unfair for Hausmann and Barham because they're both very good in their own right too. But this is the college game. You got to fill, you've got holes to fill, shoes to fill, roles to take over. You gotta, that it is what it is. And, replacing Michael Barrett is no easy task. And, good luck to them, but they'll be fine. They'll be fine. I'm not worried about the linebacker group at all.
I think this linebacker group is comparable to the edge group that we just did in the sense that there are a clear top two guys, like we just talked about with Derek Moore and Josiah Stewart. I think you see that here with Ernest Hausmann and Jayshon Barham. And I think what Josh said is exactly right. I think the ceiling,
Jordan
I guess.
Marshall. What's up, my man?
Jordan
We were
Marshall in the
just,
chat.
we were just talking about you.
Yeah.
We were just talking about you, Jordan. Good things.
Big
Trust me.
potential on
We weren't talking smack. I promise you.
I mean, I was the one that said he's contributing as a freshman. I don't remember the rest of you, but
I said
just kidding.
But yeah,
Jordan.
I think how far this group can go, it all comes down to guys like Jaden Hood, Jimmy Rolder, and Micah Pollard. And like I said, you know what you're going to get out of Ernest Hausmann and Jaysean Barton. Those are two really, really good linebackers. But we know Michigan likes to rotate on defense, keep guys fresh. And so I think it's going to come down to how much can we see improvement from Jaden Hood, a guy who, from what we heard, played really well in fall camp last year and was pushing, but then I guess it just never worked out, didn't really see the field. Jimmy Rolder saw significant snaps as a freshman. He played big minutes in that, or big snaps in that Ohio State game there in Columbus. That's funny. Trevor said Jordan Marshall should get 30 touches a game right away. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, yeah, like I said, Rolder, he was a guy that was playing in the first half, if I'm not mistaken, of the Ohio State game before it was kind of getting out of hand there in the second half in Columbus. So I think if guys like Jaden Hood, Jimmy Rolder, and Micah Pollard can step up, you're going to see a really good linebacker group behind Hausmann and Barham. And I don't think you're going to see too much of a drop off from losing Colson and Barrett, because Hausmann and Barham can step up. You'll see improvement from Hausmann for sure, and we know what Barham can do. Like Trevor said, he played well against Michigan there late in the regular season. But yeah, in my opinion, it all comes down to how much Hood, Rolder, and Pollard can progress in their games.
I want to pause real quick. Fold season here. What a name. Was Niblack brought up? No, I don't expect Michigan to go after a transfer portal tight end right now. I don't expect them to do it. I think they like their depth right now, and I don't think they're going to add as of right now. I mean, they could in April. Obviously, a lot of this. I mean, the window is closed, but you know, with grad transfers coming in and out and stuff, I very much expect for them to do most of their additions in April. So we'll kind of see. You know, I don't think they're going to add any. You know, if they have injuries, then maybe. But right now, I don't see them immediately adding anyone at the tight end spot. And I know they're trying to keep people instead of adding people. So
I'd say it's a little different than last time. AJ Barner was such an obvious plug-in for Schoonmaker, and there was no obvious person to step up, right? But yeah, we talked about tight end. So if anybody's jumping in now, you'll be able to cycle back to that. But I think you guys both nailed it. The one thing I would add is this is a group we've seen Michigan not be scared to just leave two dudes on the field, right? So 2022 and a lot of 23, Colson and Barrett just did not come off the field much. So if Hausmann and Barham are heads above everyone else, I wouldn't be shocked if that happens. I'm with you though, Josh. There's some that group, the sophomores they're all redshirt freshmen, I guess, but Bridgman, Hewlett, and Moore. People always ask us, hey, who have you heard about that maybe we wouldn't know about? I think those are three guys we've heard people talk about, even though we haven't really seen anything. Jeremiah Beasley, obviously down the road, is going to bring speed to that position. Mason Curtis is a sneaky good addition. And without getting into the Ludwig situation too much, I got him penciled in at linebacker. I wouldn't be shocked if he's the eventual Bredesen replacement.
Yeah, I think
he's HVAC fullback role. But
I think that's exactly what he's going to be, is that Bredesen role once he's come and gone.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So a couple more positions to get to. This one we're going to call interesting, right? So cornerback, the obvious known is the best corner in college football. Will Johnson is returning. I think things begin and almost stop there, right? You know you've got Will Johnson, but that's not true. You've lost Mike Sainer still. I think just like we were talking about with Michael Barrett, That's a guy on and off the field. I don't know how you replace. You're not going to do it with one guy. You're probably going to do it with multiple players, which is why Michigan was looking at a couple dudes in the portal. I have a theory about why they might not anymore. We'll get to that. JJ McBurrows is back. We saw him compete for CB2 role and then kind of become the backup nickel. The guy's battling, though, for that other outside spot. McBurrows potentially, or maybe he's the nickel. Again, we'll get into that. I think Miles Pollard and Cody Jones could get their name in. But DJ Waller and Jair Hill were two freshmen that at different moments last year made some moves, and I think are probably at the forefront of that conversation. But I don't know if I want to bring it up now or wait till we get to safety. But I think there is a safety who could make his way into this conversation as well.
Yeah, why not? I mean, they're both kind of
So here's my deal.
So to speak.
Rodmore and Makari Paige come back. We have tried desperately to figure out what's going on with Quentin Johnson. I've talked to people very close to him, and so is Josh. I don't think he knows. He could potentially enter the transfer portal later, but he's another guy you could have back at safety. In my mind, Keon Sabb, from his coverage grades, right? 5 pass breakups. We saw 2 in the national championship game, 2 interceptions. He's a guy who can get physical. He has a high pass rush grade. He only blitzed 6 times this year, had 3 pressures on those 6. I think that's a guy you plug into that nickel safety role. And maybe him and McBurrows alternate in different ways. McBurrows plays outside. I think you can get creative there. But when I think about how they use Dax Hill versus Sanders still, I wonder if Sabb is a interesting solution to a problem that might exist at corner.
Yeah, I mean, you can even throw in Jaden McBurrows in that slot nickel type of role too. I mean, they've got guys that can do it. I sound like such a broken record when it comes to this team, but they have talent, just a lot of unknowns. And it's happened before at corner, and they've been just fine. I know they tried to add through the portal, missed on Upton Stout. I think they could go that route again in April, or unless, there's someone that comes in through the portal that's a grad transfer, like a Josh Wallace type of deal. But they've got guys. So, obviously we know what Will Johnson is. DJ Waller's a guy that's seen plenty of time. Jair Hill needs to see more time. But, you've got 3 guys that have played. Well, Will Johnson's played significant snaps, obviously, but you've got 2 guys outside of Will Johnson who have played some good amount of snaps in DJ Waller and Jaden McBurrows. So 2 guys you can likely rely on. Do they fill the CB2 role and CB3 role? Possibly. You can do a lot of different things with them, but I know a lot of people have mentioned in the chat here, Josiah Edmond. I like him a lot. I don't know if he's going to play as a true freshman, but he's got the potential to be very, very good in the future.
It's a really good find.
Yeah, solid find.
Everybody went from a Purdue commit to big time schools offering.
Yeah. Turns into a 4-star.
Isn't that weird? Yeah.
Yeah. Funny how that works. And I think the key here for people to think about is when you are talking about Steve Clinkscale, he teaches his players every position in the defensive backfield, every position. If you're a safety, you know how to play corner, you know how to play slot, you know how to play nickel, you know how to play all of those roles. And vice versa. If you're a corner, you know how to play safety, you know how to play boundary and field and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not super worried about the depth because they are so unique in terms of their coverages. They've put Rod Moore all over the field. They've put Keon Sabb all over the field. So I think
it's a really good point. Rod Moore broke out on this team as the backup and the guy that filled in for Dax Hill. That's how he started.
So they've got guys.
Role, yeah.
They've got guys that you can mix and match. You don't necessarily have to rely on the younger guys. I mean, yeah, you'd like to see them play and you'd like to see them develop, but if you're really worried about it, Klink is gonna slot and mix guys around because he's just good like that. That's what he does. So I'm not super worried about it because Klink is that good of a coach that can kind of shuffle his defensive backs around. So, yeah, I mean, you can't replace Mike Sainer still. Josh Wallace, excellent addition, a portal addition. But Will Johnson there, you've got one cornerback role locked down forever. So we'll see. I mean, I trust the coaching staff to put these guys in position. And, the good thing is having all these guys come back at safety, you can kind of, mix and match.
This is slowly becoming the name drop show. My boy, Mr. Darbo, congratulations again. Recently married. Don't ever ask that dude if he works out. He does. That's a big man.
You even lift, bro?
Yeah, I used that line.
Lift, Darbo?
Picture from his wedding with his suit jacket unable to button because his arms are out here. Not kidding. I love you, Darbo. Good to see you, brother. Brock, go ahead, man.
Here's where I'm at with this group. I think this is the most intriguing group on the roster because it almost seems like they have one more guy than the amount of positions that are on the field. Will Johnson's going to be a starter. We know that. And you're going to get another corner, whether that be Waller or McBurrows. It's going to be someone. You're going to have two corners. And then you have two safeties and a nickel split between McBurrows, Rod Moore, Makari Paige, and Keon Sabb. And I don't know what they're going to do. I could see him going with McBurrows at nickel. I could see him going with Rod Moore at nickel. I could see him going with Keon Sabb at nickel. I think there are only two known commodities right now, and I think it's Will Johnson at corner and Makari Paige at safety. I don't know what they're going to do. Someone's going to have to, I guess, come off the bench. And, they rotated Keon Sabb a lot in the national championship game. He played really, really well other than that missed tackle. But
I'm just laughing at the JJ talking, the JJ discourse in the comments.
I was on a roll there, and I saw you guys smiling, and I saw the chat and couldn't help but laugh.
My bad. Sorry for distracting. I couldn't help myself.
I'm happy for the young man. That's
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm really interested to see what they do. I tell you what, I really think Rod Moore would make a great nickel, and then they could go with Keon Sabb and Makari Paige at safety. But then again, McBurrows played well too. He had that interception in the Michigan State game. So I don't know what they're going to do. It's very, very interesting, but it almost seems like they have not enough starting spots, that is, for the amount of players that could contribute.
Here's what I
just a ray of sunshine today.
Yep. I'm not going to bash the decisions of a 20-year-old who is already richer than I'll ever be. So here's what I know about the Michigan defense. They adjust to the players that they have and the strengths that they have, right? So like we talked about with the edge position, we saw with Hutch and Ajabo, it was two dudes only. And then when they had the four guys to rotate, that's what it was. Defensive tackle depth, linebackers, just the two. We saw with corner initially some rotation, and Josh Wallace exceeding expectations, not only holding on to that job all year, but like competing with Will and Sainer still in terms of coverage grades and pass breakups. And they threw his way a lot because they weren't throwing it Will Johnson's way a ton, right? So, but we've seen them do three safety looks before, right? Especially when Makari Paige came on and kind of took Moten's job. There was a lot of three safety looks, and Moten kind of went into that hybrid role. I haven't brought up Zeke Berry. We'll talk about him. He's in the safety conversation as well. I'm torn because, Brock, I've seen Rod Moore do the nickel role before, and he was good at it, so I kind of agree with you. But I also think, in a weird way, like we talked about with Zinter going down, Barnhart moving over, and Jones coming in, I think I prefer Rod Moore at free safety.
Yeah.
And that convert. So I know that's it. And they could rotate them. Here's the thing. You're going to have your five best secondary players. And if that's Will Johnson and Waller and Hill or McBurrows or one of them, and then Moore, Paige, and Sabb, and I'm running a 4-2-5, that's my five secondary guys. Like Josh said, Will Johnson can play nickel and safety too. All of these guys can play anywhere. And that's part of what makes this defense so good, is the ability to disguise and adjust. So, but this is another group where, look, similar to defensive tackle, There's talent and people that need to rise up, but I have Will Johnson. And I feel really good about that. And I feel good about Klink maybe coming through with rest. Comments, I didn't talk about it. Amarian Walker entering the portal. Kind of the same thing as Clemens, guys. Harbaugh has said this out loud before. If you're a sophomore and you haven't already carved out a role in the 2-deep going into your junior year, like it makes sense for you to look around. Walker was part of that freak show wide receiver class too. They move him over. He can't get healthy. He plays a little bit. If he decides, he wants to go do something else and maybe have an easier chance and doesn't want to compete with, look, we just mentioned 3 or 4 dudes already without even mentioning him leaving, right? Again, who he could be and who he was, I don't blame him for looking somewhere else, and I'm comfortable with what Michigan has. Look, we've talked about this already largely, so let's nail it down here with the rest. So Paige and Moore are back. Quentin Johnson, I still have on here. We don't know yet. He could come in. Quentin Johnson, man. Talk about, I know the big hit against Ohio State, obviously, but this is a dude that graded out, played a lot of snaps. Like him coming back would be huge, and this group's already loaded. I've got Christian Dixon listed here. He kind of announced he's made the change over. I don't know if that's more than like, hey, you're not getting on the field at receiver if you want to try DB. I don't know. He's been loyal to Michigan. He said he's switching positions. So them turf, Toski the GOAT, no cap. We're still trying to figure out how we can do cut-ups, guys. ESPN sucks.
Yeah, Yahoo. YouTube's really cut down or nailed down on that lately. I don't know what I don't know what the solution is.
I think it was the viewership of the game and how big it is, but like I just wish they understood like the game already happened. We're not taking anything from you, and channels like ours are bringing more attention to the sport, which is good for you. But whatever, that discussion later. But anyway, Josh, this is a group. Not a lot of questions because of Paige and Moore coming back. Really, it's like, well, like Brock said, do I have enough spots to get playing time for how many players are in this spot? And then I think Brandon Hillman is a sneaky good young player in this group too.
Yeah, he could be this year's Keon Sabb for sure. Definitely a guy that could see some time. Zeke Berry too. Jaden Smith. He is a guy who's very, very intriguing to me. I do not think he'll play right away, but once they figure out what they're going to do with him, I think he's going to be very good. Jaden Smith could be a safety, or they could kind of bump him down to be like a hybrid linebacker. Mm-hmm. His coach raved about him when
What would you call that? Is there a name for a position like that?
A viper?
No, don't say it.
Oh, no, Don Brown coming back. Confirmed. Don Brown confirmed.
I got you.
Isaiah Simmons. Yeah, Shadyville. That's a really good comparison. But yeah, for Jaden
God,
Smith,
that dude was a beast at Clemson.
Yeah. Well, and that's the tough thing too. When you go to the next level, the NFL, it's really hard to find a role.
Yeah, when you're one of those hybrid guys.
Yeah, you're not a linebacker, but you're not a safety, but you do really well in the college game. So I could see him become a linebacker, and they just say, don't worry about safety, just be a linebacker full time. But he's a guy that intrigues the hell out of me. So yeah, there's Rob Moore, Makari Paige, I think the best safety group in the country, if not one of the best. Adding Quentin Johnson back is huge. Again, we don't really know what he's going to do yet. He might just go through the spring and kind of see where he's at, and either grad transfer or stay for his last year. But if it's hard to see him going anywhere, the way they used him was great, but I could kind of see him wanting to get more playing time. But Keon Sabb, we already know what he is. That's a lot of trust to have Keon Sabb play the amount he did in the national championship game. That is a lot of trust. Mm-hmm. And he performed well. One mistake that didn't end up biting them too much at the end, but bounced back from that mistake, played well. I just think he's going to be a really good contributor, whether it's where they bump him down the corner if necessary, or they rotate him in and out with Makari or Rod. There's depth there, which is good. And I know people won't mention Caden Colazar as a safety, but that loss from a special teams perspective is really important. And I know people think like if you don't see the field and people will kind of brush off special teams, having an effective gunner on special teams is huge. And Jay Harbaugh seems to always find one every year. There's like a Matthew Hibner too, left, entered the portal today, and he was another really valuable special teams guy. So
Hellman was last year too.
Yeah, if you know ball, if you are a ball knower, you'll know the importance of having good special teams players, despite guys being buried on the depth chart like a Christian Dixon. They're incredibly important too. So anytime you lose them, it's tough to bounce back from. But when we talk about top end talent, Michigan's got it. Again, another position I'm not worried about whatsoever.
Yeah, I talked a lot already about McCarty, Paige, and Rod Moore and Keon Sabb, the guys there at the top. But Christian Dixon is a guy that is interesting to me. He's kind of in the same boat for me as like Tavi or Dunlap, guys that have been around for a while, and I'm surprised that they're still here, if I'm being honest, just because they haven't really seen the field all that much, right? And he makes the transition from wide receiver over to safety. We'll see if that works out for him, but yeah, a lot to be excited about with this group. Zeke Berry, really talented. There was a play, I think it was early in the year in a non-conference game, if I remember right, where he just came and shot out of a cannon and made a big tackle. I think it was for a loss. And then he got hurt either on that play or a few plays later, if I remember right, and then didn't see the field too much after that. But yeah, a lot to be excited about with this group. I think the ceiling of this defense is increased now that McCarty, Paige, and Rod Moore are back. And I tell you what, I wouldn't be surprised if Keon Sabb pushed for a starting role in whatever role it may be. I think he's too good to keep off the field. And like you mentioned, Josh, they have a lot of trust in him, putting him on the field for as much as he was on the field in that national championship game. And he made a lot of big plays. He had 2 pass breakups and like we all mentioned, he missed the tackle. That Washington only got a field goal out of that, so it didn't hurt Michigan. But he's a guy where I think he might just be so good you can't leave him off the field. And whether that means rotating in with Paige and Moore or playing at nickel or playing at corner, whatever it may be, I think he's a guy that's got to be on the field.
Yeah,
a lot in 2024.
You guys have already touched on it, but yeah, after that missed tackle, his only missed tackle, he ended up being one of the leading tacklers in that national championship game. He graded out behind only Mason Graham for being the best player in that game. He was targeted 7 times, gave up only 3 receptions for 28 yards. He had 2 monster pass breakups that were not just solid for the moment they happened, but technique-wise, right? So I'm with you. Sabb might be, when all said and done by the end of this, the second best player behind Will Johnson in that secondary. So I think he gets on the field. Somebody had asked about Johnson taking his job. Johnson's more of the strong safety with Paige. Sabb is more of a free safety with Rod Moore. So that's the dynamic with those two there. I do not want to spend a bunch of time, no offense to our kickers out there, but James Turner is gone. Tommy Doman will obviously be your punter again. He showed some strong leg. And then Adam Samaha is going to be your guy that takes over that kicker. He was, when it comes to like recruiting rankings for kickers, he's about as good as it gets. Yeah. There was a chance he was going to be the kicker as a freshman, and they ended up adding Turner, because it's tough to win a national championship with a freshman kicker. Turner, obviously a big part of winning that game against Ohio State. So, but I would expect Samaha to be pretty good stepping in next year. So that said, boom. Hey, we're back. All right, 2 hours of roster talk. Yes.
Franklin just absolutely passed out in the background.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
He's been asleep this whole pod, and he is just out like a light.
It's funny. He used to bark all the time, and this is what you got to do. Just keep the door open as long as he knows he can be in there with you. Yeah. So the cat making an appearance. I did not know. I locked my cat in the office with me, so he is freaking the hell out right now. Which means it's time to go. Anyway. So for those of you either just joining us or watching back, obviously we did go through each position group. I'll go through and make sure I can edit it so you can go back and revisit the conversations by position. We obviously started with Jim Harbaugh talk, and there will be more of it to come. So make sure you are following us over at michigan.rivals.com. Obviously, so we cover Michigan for the Rivals Network. If you're not subscribed already, which I already, again, see a bunch of our subscribers in here, they can speak to it. We always say, ask our subscribers in our community. We're so proud of the community we have over there in the den. Maybe not as positive this week as we would have expected. I think some of you Michigan fans have been so worried for so long about getting to this point. You don't know how to be now that we're here. They won a national championship. It's okay to be excited. You could be a little concerned about the future too, but go ahead and enjoy that national championship, because this guy right here, that was a long time ago. Right.
It was.
26 years. Give it more than a couple days. Right. Enjoy this daddy. But anyway, make sure you're over at the den, so you're getting the intel updates from our boy, Mr. Josh Henschke. And then, like Brock said, football season's year round. So I already have depth charts up for offense and defense. We're going to start getting into, the spring topics, the breakout player candidates and all of that. So, and then obviously the NFL draft is coming up, and Michigan is going to try to break the record for most players selected from one school in a draft. They obviously have, like I said, 20, 21 guys, depending how you look at it, have to get to 15 actually selected. We'll have to see. Right. And then we'll have conversation about JJ.
And it's in Detroit too.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
Totally forgot that.
Yeah, I just realized that the other day when they were talking about it.
Wow.
Like, oh, yeah. It's
so the Lions are going to win the Super Bowl and have the NFL draft the same year. That's weird.
We'll have a Folds. We'll have a draft preview at some point.
Oh yeah,
in the coming months.
Yeah, it's a little too early, but yeah, we follow the combine, and then I always have stuff going out there with different mock drafts, and then once it gets close to the draft, we have a pretty good idea of where some of those guys may or may not go, teams that are interested and such. But yeah, we'll definitely have draft coverage all the way leading up till the end of April about what teams they've met with and things like that. So again, make sure you're following along michigan.rivals.com. If you're here on YouTube Live, we love having you in the conversation and answering questions. If you want to be live with us, make sure you're liking, subscribing, and doing the notification bell so when we do go live with Hail to the Podcast, cut-ups with Toski, and all of Dennis's post-game coverage and live shows during the week. So other than that, this has been another episode of Hail to the Podcast. We will be back next week. I'm sure there'll be nothing to talk about when it comes to...
Honestly, at this point, I hope so. We'll see. I mean, I don't know. Who the hell knows?
Hey, let's do it. I know it's Tuesday. Josh, Michigan or Chargers right now? What's your bet?
Oh boy. Hold on. I just gotta get rid of this dickhead in the
Just posting the same thing again. I don't understand it.
Hey, suck on that natty.
Yeah, like. I love the goalpost moving, by the way. I've seen this now where it's like, okay, you won one natty, now win another, huh? Like, what?
Oh, Michigan just won the natty.
It's so dumb. Anyway, Michigan Chargers, don't get – what'd you say?
I just dropped the F-bomb.
Oh.
Well, I guess you didn't hear it.
Oh, yeah, because we're normally so family-friendly.
Whoops.
Anyway, yeah. Don't go too deep. Just Michigan Chargers. Who you got?
You
can change your mind, but if you had to guess today.
Oh, boy. I still say Michigan, but, man, it's getting closer and closer every day. No news is good news, I think. If this goes on during the week, no news is good news. But it feels different. It does not feel like the Broncos or the Vikings. So there's my cat wanting to say hello.
Mine would claw the shit out of me if I picked it up, but
I still say Michigan for now, but man, we'll see. We'll see.
Brock,
it feels legitimate.
I said Chargers last week. I'm going to stick with it. Actually, I said somewhere in the NFL.
Yeah, we had to really dig that out of you.
Yeah.
Where did you go? NFL.
I just think it's going to be the NFL.
No, yeah, I'm sticking with Chargers for now.
Yeah. I'm with Josh. It does feel a little different this time around. I don't think the Chargers are going to give him everything he wants. what I don't.
Harbaugh is a weirdo. That's the thing. Like,
Yeah.
you just can't predict what he's doing.
Yeah. I still like I believe him that he would be content staying here, and I get the Super Bowl pull. I do think the Chargers are the one job as well. Like when it comes to the family element, I beat this topic to death, but I'm still picking Michigan right now. I don't think Falcons, Raiders. It's Chargers or Michigan for me. LA has been so deliberate with the amount of coaches they've interviewed and the GMs, and I think the GM hire is probably more important than the head coach hire with their roster situation. And that might be a big tell too, what they're doing moving forward based on the GM they hired. But anyway, like I said, follow along Michigan.rivals.com. We'll keep you up to date on the rumors and what Josh thinks is BS among some of those rumors.
That's a lot of bullshit out there.
Yeah. Again, anybody telling you they know what Harbaugh's thinking is lying. I've said that for 3 years now. Like if that is their framing that they're coming from, where hey, this is what he wants, you don't know, you're lying. Some people have joked. I say it's always if you're not Jim, John, Jack, or Sarah, and some people have joked, man, Sarah might not know, right? Like that's the way this dude operates. So
yeah, some people claim to know what's going on and claim to be his friends, but they don't truly know what's going up and all up in that dome.
And he has an NFL agent now. So I think what is said and what gets out there is obviously different too. You brought that up. Like that might not be directly from him, but we're at that leverage tension stage where things are being said for maybe different reasons than what's actually being said. But yeah, Account 22 nails it. Nobody knows anything. Sometimes this takes time. The constant 5-minute updates, also ridiculous. That's not how these things play out. So anyway.
Well, and I will say with parting words here, I think this process isn't going to be quick. I don't get the sense this is going to be quick. So by the time we talk on whether it's Sunday or Monday, probably Monday, considering the playoffs, and I'm going to be all in on the Lions on Sunday. I don't know if we'll even have any sort of sense of what's happening next. The Chargers are interviewing someone on Friday. I know they're doing another interview. I know they requested an interview for, I think it was Raheem Morris this week too. So I don't expect this cycle to be done for the Chargers to be done this week. Maybe not even next week. We'll kind of see, because obviously you got to do second round of interviews. So I don't know.
I've never been more sure it's going to happen tomorrow. Every time we do this, it's a jinx. It's something
we'll have to do some sort of emergency pod if that's the case.
Yeah.
But
which if you have your notification bell on, you'll know when we go live.
Right, exactly. Ow. He's hooked on me.
We're all hooked on you, Josh, and your excellent coverage over at Michigan.rivals.com.
Yeah. If you're not a subscriber, you should do it.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Thanks for joining us, guys. As always, here on Hail to the Podcast. We'll see you.